In December 2023, Argentina's monthly inflation hit 25.5%. By the end of 2024, annual inflation had crossed 200%. A steak dinner in Buenos Aires cost more pesos than a used car did 5 years earlier. In Lebanon, the pound has lost roughly 98% of its value since 2019. In Turkey, official inflation stayed above 60% through most of 2024. 3 currencies, 3 governments, 1 pattern. That's not the first time money died this way, and we already know how the story ends. History doesn't repeat. It patterns. This one is called the Weimar sequence. It's what happens when a government can no longer pay its debts in honest money and decides the cheapest weapon it has left is the currency itself. Berlin, May 1921. The London ultimatum lands on the German government's desk. The Allied powers demand 132 billion gold marks in reparations. In the dollars of that year, roughly 33 billion. Germany has no gold reserves large enough to pay. It has no export surplus large enough to pay. What it has is a printing press. To send gold marks abroad, the Reichsbank needed foreign currency. To get foreign currency, it had to sell German marks on international exchanges, millions of them, then billions, then trillions. Every sale pushed the mark's value down. Every drop made the next reparations payment more expensive in marks. The loop fed itself. In 1914, $1 bought 4.2 German marks. By January 1923, $1 bought 18,000 marks. The slope was already vertical, but the real acceleration hadn't started yet. January 11, 1923. French and Belgian troops march into the Ruhr Valley, Germany's industrial heart, to seize coal and steel as reparations in kind. The Weimar government responds with something called passive resistance. It tells the Ruhr workers, do not cooperate, strike, sabotage, and we will pay your wages. Paying roughly 2 million striking workers for 8 months, with no tax revenue coming from the occupied zone, required one thing: the printing press running day and night. Some economic historians argue this was not panic. It was strategy. A deliberate demonstration to London and Paris that the reparations regime was physically impossible. Inflation as diplomatic leverage. By November 1923, $1 bought 4.2 trillion marks. A loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. Workers were paid twice a day, and their wives met them at the factory gates with wheelbarrows, sprinting to shops before the afternoon price update. Restaurants stopped printing menus. Shopkeepers refused paper money and demanded eggs, coal, cigarettes. Pensioners who had saved for 40 years discovered their life savings wouldn't buy a tram ticket. Crime exploded. Bread riots broke out in Hamburg and Berlin. Then, almost overnight, it stopped. On November 15, 1923, the Rentenmark was introduced, backed notionally by mortgages on German land and industrial assets. The supply was strictly limited. The psychological reset took about 72 hours. Shopkeepers reopened, prices stabilized. The nightmare ended, but the damage was already permanent. The middle class that had been wiped out in 1923, the teachers, civil servants, small business owners, pensioners, they never forgot. They never forgave. 10 years later, in the elections of 1932 and 1933, those same districts, those same demographics, delivered their votes to a party promising national restoration. The hyperinflation didn't just destroy savings, it fertilized something worse. And the pattern didn't begin in 1923. 400 years earlier, 16th century Spain flooded Europe with silver from the mines of Potosi and nearly destroyed its own currency, debasing the maravedi until domestic prices tripled. Spain too was trapped paying foreign debts to bankers in Genoa and Augsburg, and inflation became the default mechanism. Different century, different metal, same structure. A government that owes more than it earns, running out of honest options. Here's why this keeps happening. A government has three ways to pay its bills: tax, borrow, or print. Taxing is politically painful. Borrowing requires lenders who trust you'll repay. When taxes are maxed out and lenders start demanding higher yields, the third option, quietly printing, becomes irresistible. Economists call this fiscal dominance. It's the moment the central bank loses independence and becomes the government's ATM. Think of it like a household with a credit card bill it can't pay. The family can cut spending, borrow from relatives, or counterfeit money in the basement. The first two are hard. The third feels free. Until it isn't. The trap closes because of a mathematical reality called velocity. Normally, money circulates at a stable pace. But when citizens sense their currency is losing value, they spend it faster. Faster circulation, chasing the same goods, pushes prices up further. Higher prices make people spend even faster. The loop goes vertical. Weimar added a second accelerator: foreign obligations. When your debts are denominated in a currency you can't print, gold, dollars, euros, domestic printing doesn't solve the problem. It makes the foreign debt bigger in local terms. You're running up a down escalator. Now add the political layer. Hyperinflation is almost never caused by stupidity. It's caused by a government that has calculated correctly that default is more dangerous than inflation. Default means losing sovereignty to foreign creditors. Inflation means losing it to your own citizens, who historically complain less loudly in the short run. So the mechanism is external pressure, plus internal political paralysis, plus a central bank that has quietly surrendered. That's the recipe. Weimar had all three by 1922. And that's where it gets uncomfortable, because we've seen those three ingredients in the same pot before. Many times. 3 times this decade. Argentina, 2024. Inflation passed 200% annually. The central bank financed government deficits for years by printing pesos. President Javier Milei took office in December 2023, pledging to dollarize and abolish the central bank entirely. As of early 2026, reports suggest monthly inflation has slowed significantly, but the peso's real value against the dollar remains a fraction of what it was in 2020. An entire generation of Argentines hold savings in dollars, crypto, or BRICS. The currency still exists. Trust does not. Turkey, same period. Official annual inflation ran above 60% for most of 2024. Unofficial estimates put it higher. President Erdogan spent years pressuring the central bank to cut interest rates while inflation rose, the textbook definition of fiscal dominance. The lira lost roughly 80% of its value against the dollar between 2020 and 2024. Turkish households shifted savings into gold, dollars, and real estate. Domestic electronics stores reportedly repriced goods daily. Lebanon is further along the curve. The pound has lost approximately 98% of its value since 2019. The banking system froze deposits. ATMs dispensed fractions of requested amounts. Supermarkets priced goods in dollars while displaying prices in pounds for legal cover. A country that once called Beirut the Paris of the Middle East now runs on cash, generators, and remittances from abroad. Each of these matches a different stage of the Weimar sequence. Turkey looks like Germany in 1921. Inflation accelerating, central bank compromised, population beginning to hedge. Argentina looks like early 1923. The public has lost faith in the currency, but the state is still experimenting with stabilization. Lebanon looks like late 1923 without a Rentenmark. The collapse has happened, but no credible anchor has arrived. The indicators worth watching globally are consistent. Central bank balance sheets as a percentage of GDP. In the United States, it sits near 23% in 2026, down from pandemic peaks. In Japan, above 125%. The share of population holding foreign currency or crypto. The velocity of money. The price of gold in local terms, which crossed $4,000 an ounce in 2025. Each of these is a pressure gauge. When several move together, the pattern is loading. Can the sequence be broken? Yes, but rarely and never cheaply. Germany did it in November 1923 with the Rentenmark, a new currency backed by a credible asset, issued in strictly limited supply, introduced at the exact moment public desperation was highest. The psychological switch required three things together: a believable anchor, a hard supply cap, and political will to accept the short-term pain of recession. Take away anyone, and stabilization fails. Brazil managed it in 1994 with the Plano Real after decades of chronic inflation. Israel did it in 1985. Both cases required coordinated fiscal discipline, an independent central bank, and a government willing to spend political capital it didn't necessarily have. The countries that failed to escape, Zimbabwe in 2008, Venezuela after 2016, lacked one or more of those pieces. Usually, the political will. The honest answer is that the pattern is breakable, but only by governments that accept the one thing every indebted government resists: telling the public the truth about what the money is worth. That's a harder problem than economics. It's a problem of courage. Pattern confirmed. The Weimar sequence isn't a story about Germany. It's what indebted states do when math collides with politics. Now I want your take. Do you think this same pattern is unfolding today, or is this time truly different? Tell me your perspective in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.